There's only one way to find out, isn't it? Peter said on the night that they were going to arrest Jesus, I will die before I let them take you. The way we would say it is, over my dead body. I'm going to be betrayed. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hand of the soldiers. Peter said, over my dead body? No, they're not. And you know, I think he really believed that. I think he really meant it. And the reason I do is because when they did come to take Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter pulls a sword out and he's ready to take on what could have been. Now, there's no way we can know for sure, but if you look at history, it's possible that there were as many as 500 soldiers there that night to take Jesus. I know that when we think of it, and if you watch the Passion of the Christ, there was a handful of them, 6 or 8, maybe 12 soldiers, but if you look at the tense of the original word and description of these soldiers and how it's used in other places, it could mean as many as 500 soldiers. Now you say, why in the world would they send 500 soldiers to get a carpenter? Keep in mind, this carpenter has been proven to walk on water, cast out demons, raise people from the dead, restore sight to the blind. They know that he has power. They deny where he gets that power. They know he's powerful, and I think they were scared of him. Did you notice when they came and said, who's Jesus? He said, I'm the one you seek. What happened? They fell back and gasped, didn't they? I think maybe it's because they didn't realize how close they were to him. They walked up on him before they realized it. It's kind of like when you look down, you see a snake at your feet. And all of a sudden, you can walk on water, right? Because what happens, that initial reaction, that just fear that strikes in your heart. Here's old Peter against maybe hundreds of soldiers with his one little sword, and he starts swinging. I think he really meant what he said. But isn't it funny, this guy who in one moment is ready to fight a whole garrison of soldiers is going to be afraid enough to deny the Lord by a little girl. A little slave girl. It says, weren't you one of his disciples? Later on, when he's separated from Jesus and he's separated from the other disciples and he's in enemy territory, he's in hostile territory, so to speak, he's there in the inner courtyard of the high priest's palace, and everybody that's gathered there, they're not disciples of the Lord. They're not on his side. So he's outnumbered now. He's in the minority. And now all it takes is a little slave girl saying, you were one of his disciples. Not me. Don't know him. Never heard of him. 3 times, even going to the point of using profanity in order to prove that he wasn't a follower of Jesus. By the way, as a side note, if you're a cusser, that's a pretty good way to prove you're not a Christian. That's how Peter proved he wasn't a follower of Jesus, was with his language. So if you're struggling with the habit of bad language, work on it and get that out of your life, because it's going to be hard to convince people you're a follower of Jesus if they hear words coming out of your mouth that are not Christ-like. What was the difference? You see, back there when they were in the Garden of Gethsemane even, back there when they were in the upper room observing the Passover together, he was surrounded by the other apostles. He was standing right beside Jesus. It's easy to be strong then, isn't it? It's easy to be strong right now. You're surrounded by other Christians. We're in the presence of the Lord. Who couldn't be strong right now? But what about when you leave here and you find yourself outnumbered? You're in the devil's playground. You're on his home field. In sports, home field advantage is a powerful and important thing. Everybody wants to play important games on their home field. When you walk out into the world, Satan is the god of this world. You're on his home field. And all of a sudden, little things can shake your faith unless you've learned to trust the Master. Now, here's the problem. We've got a need that has got to be met. You know what we usually do as Christians when we see that there are needs? We talk about what we would do if we had unlimited resources. You ever like to play that game? What would you do? We do this with our kids sometimes. We just talk about it. If you had right now instantly, bam, $1 million cash right here in your possession, what would you do with it? You know what we all say? We'd support missionaries, and we'd pay off debts that a church has, and we'd support preacher students, and we'd set up benevolent funds. We talk about all these grand things we would do if we had the means. But rather than worrying about what we would do if we had all these unlimited resources, the Lord usually is more worried about what are you going to do with what you do have. Isn't it interesting when you look at some of the people that Jesus praised in the Bible? He very seldom, He very seldom would praise people who did great things. He usually praised people who didn't have much, but they did something with it. The widow that had 2 mites, there were people that were throwing in more money than she would see in her lifetime in the treasury, in the collection plate. This woman throws in a couple of pennies. But he singled her out and he said, that's faith right there. There's your faith. Right? There's selflessness. There's the attitude we're talking about of sharing. There it is right there. This woman is given everything that she has. Now all these others, they've cast in of their abundance. She's given everything that she had. She didn't have a lot to give. She just used what she had. And the Lord exalted her for it. Remember the woman that came in with an alabaster box full with ointment? Year's salary. Saved up a long time for this. But she wanted to give a gift to the Lord. And so she broke open that very precious commodity and she began to anoint him with it. And everybody else was tore all to pieces. What a waste. You could have sold that. Now we know why Judas did it. Judas was stealing money out of the treasury. And he knew if they had sold this, that's a lot more money in his pocket. But even the rest of them joined in. We could have sold that and done a lot of good for the poor. They're speaking in hypotheticals, aren't they? This woman's not thinking about what we could do. She just says, look, I've got it right here and I'm going to do it right now. Rather than spending all of our time wondering about and worried about what we would do and what we might do if we had this, if we could do that, sometimes we need to just stop and focus on what it is that we can do, that we have in our ability. It's better to do something with a little than do nothing with a lot. And remember, Jesus said this as a test to his disciples. Philip says, we can't do it. You know what the other disciples said? It's not our problem. Lord, it's the end of the day. There's nowhere to buy food around here. Send them away. It's not my problem. It's not my fault they didn't plan ahead. It's not my fault that they didn't bring food. It's not my fault that they're hungry. We don't have anything to do. We can't do it. Send them away. How often is that our attitude as Christians? We see a need, it breaks our heart, and we think, boy, if I was rich, they'd never have to beg for money again. I'd pay for it. If I had all this money, if I had the money that so-and-so had, they'd never have to go around and ask for support. I'd just pay for all of it myself. You know what we're doing? We're sending them away. Lord, send them somewhere else. It's not my problem. Maybe you don't have $1 million to solve all their problems. Maybe you got 5. I want you to think about something. Do this tomorrow. You might even be able to do it tonight, but do it tomorrow if you can. Try to remember, write yourself a note and remember this. Tomorrow you'll be getting up, going to work, doing your normal routine. When you get up and go through your normal routine, take a pen and a piece of paper and jot down every nickel you spend. Everything. I know it'll take a little time, but it's very eye-opening. If you stop at the store, get a cup of coffee, a pack of gum, a biscuit, whatever, write it down. You get to work, you put $1 in the vending machine and get a Snicker bar out, write it down. Keep track of every penny you spend just for one day. And then be amazed at how much money you spend that you don't have to. We're not even touching house payments, car payments, children's college funds, medical bills. We're just talking about money, nickels and dimes here and there that we throw away. You will be amazed at how much money you'll spend in one day. What if you decided the first day of every week that was going to the Lord? You say, it's $3.